Have you ever found yourself sitting through a movie that you knew, 10 minutes in, was going to be dreadful? The jokes fall flat. The plot is painfully predictable, and you're in a near-constant state of boredom. Yet, you stay. You keep your eyes glued to the screen, telling yourself, I should finish it. After all, I paid for the ticket. Or maybe, the scenario isn't about movies at all. Perhaps it's your job, a job that, day after day, seems to drain you of energy and meaning. You might not even like what you're doing, but you stick with it because you spent years earning the degree that qualified you for it. Does this sound familiar? If any of this resonates with you, don't worry. You're far from alone. In fact, congratulations. You've just experienced one of the most common mental traps there is. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. So what exactly is the sunk cost fallacy? It's when we keep investing time, energy, or resources into something not because it's actually good for us or beneficial, but simply because we've already invested so much in it. The logic seems sound at first glance. You've worked hard or spent a lot of money, so why throw it all away? But here's where the trap lies. Those past investments, whether they're minutes, money, or effort, are what economists call sunk costs. They're already gone. No matter what you decide to do next, you're not getting them back. So the real question to ask ourselves isn't, what have I already spent? But rather, is this still worth my time and energy today? Let's look at a simple, relatable example. Imagine it's a cold evening, and you get the idea to prepare a hot pot for dinner. You buy all these fresh ingredients, carefully prepare the broth, and spend hours chopping vegetables and simmering meat. There's this sense of excitement, until accidentally you make the broth way too salty. Now it tastes awful, nearly inedible. A logical response might be to try fixing it, or to toss it, and just order some takeout instead. But what happens instead? You grit your teeth and convince yourself and your dinner guests to eat it anyway. Why? Because you already spent the money and hours preparing it. You don't want all that to go to waste. But here's the truth. The time you spent in the kitchen and the money you shelled out for ingredients? You're never getting those back, not by choking down a salty soup, not by convincing yourself the meal is better than it actually is. All you're doing is compounding the loss, adding disappointment, wasted calories, and perhaps even an awkward experience for everyone at the table. This kind of thinking doesn't just stop at dinner. Take relationships, for example. Someone wrote to me once, sharing their struggles. I've been with him for 5 years. He's changed. He's distant now. We argue all the time. But I can't leave. I've spent my whole youth on him. That's the sunk cost fallacy at work. She's not staying because she's happy, or because she can see a bright future with her partner. She's staying because she's afraid that leaving would mean wasting all those years she invested. But ask yourself this. Are you really willing to relive the last 5 years? The arguments, the distance, over and over again? Holding on to the past simply because of the time or energy you've already spent is no guarantee of a happier future. Why do we fall so easily into this trap? The answer lies in the way our brains are wired. We have a strong, ingrained desire to avoid feeling like we've wasted effort. Psychologists describe this behavior as loss aversion. The idea that the pain of losing something is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. That's why admitting a mistake, accepting a bad investment, or walking away from something that isn't working can feel so difficult. In those moments, we're not just afraid of a bad outcome, we're afraid of having that loss become real. So instead of cutting our losses, we double down. We tell ourselves, maybe it'll get better, or I've already come this far, or even, I don't want to feel like I failed. These are comforting stories, but they're often justifications for prolonging an experience that isn't making us happier, better, or more fulfilled. The harsh truth is that continuing a bad decision doesn't magically turn it into a good one. It just makes the total cost, the time, the money, the energy you'll never get back grow even larger. Let's take another look at the workplace. Imagine someone who's been in the same job for 7 years. Every Monday, they wake up with dread, exhausted before the week has even begun. Despite their unhappiness, they stay put. Why? It's not love for the work, but rather because of that degree, a degree that took 4 years and a lot of money to earn. The important thing to remember here is that you don't owe your past a lifetime of misery. A degree, or any sort of past effort, isn't a commitment to spend the rest of your life doing something that no longer makes sense for you. Think of your degree as a tool meant to help you at a certain point in your life, not a shackle you have to wear forever. You're allowed to put down that tool and pick up another if it serves you better. The sunk cost fallacy isn't just a personal problem. Big organizations and even governments can fall for it too. Take the example of the Concorde project, the supersonic passenger jet developed by France and the UK together. They poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the project, years of research and engineering, and even after it became clear that the costs would never make it practical, they pressed on. Why? Not because it still made economic sense, but because so much had already been invested, and nobody wanted all that time, money, and national pride to be a waste. In the end, the Concorde was retired after less than 3 decades due to high costs and low demand, a classic, costly lesson in the dangers of sunk costs. So how do we avoid getting trapped by sunk costs in our own lives? It begins with a simple but powerful mindset shift. Instead of focusing on what you've already spent, focus on the present and the future. You can't change the past, but you're always free to choose what you do next. Ask yourself, if I could decide, right now, with a clean slate, would I choose to keep going with this? If the answer is no, then maybe it's time to let it go. Whether it's relationships, projects, jobs, or even just a bad Netflix series, you have permission to move on. You don't owe anyone, including yourself, the pain of finishing something just because you started it and invested in it. You deserve better than to be bound by past decisions, regrets, or obligations. You deserve peace, clarity, and the freedom to seek out experiences and commitments that actually fill you up. So if you're standing at a crossroads, or facing a decision where you're tempted to push on just because of what you've already put in, remember, don't let your past trap your future. Let go of the shoulds, the musts, and the weights of old investments. Sometimes walking away is the wisest choice you can make, because letting go of one bad investment opens up the space for a smart new one that just might change your life.